In late September 2025, the skies over Quezon City suddenly darkened. Cumulonimbus clouds that had been gathering since morning finally burst, unleashing an unusually intense downpour. In less than an hour, rainfall reached 121 millimeters, a figure exceeding the intensity of Typhoon Ondoy, which struck the Philippines in 2009. The normally bustling city was suddenly paralyzed. Major roads turned into impromptu rivers, vehicles ground to a halt, and thousands of residents were trapped amidst rapidly rising floodwaters. The rain began around 2 p.m., driven by easterlies, bringing moisture from the Pacific Ocean. PAGASA, the Philippine Meteorological Agency, issued an early warning, but the intensity of the downpour exceeded predictions. Within an hour, water poured onto the city's surface equivalent to twice the maximum capacity of Quezon City's drainage system. Streetsides like Commonwealth Avenue, Katipunan Avenue, and EDSA were flooded to the chest level. 2- and 4-wheeled vehicles broke down in the middle of the road, while tricycle drivers and TNVS, Transport Network Vehicle Service, drivers halted operations due to safety risks. Amid the chaos, residents of all ages were trapped. Schoolchildren returning home were forced to take shelter in minimarkets and bus stops, while seniors like Maria Elena, 62, stood for hours in the rain unable to get home. The water rose so fast, I could only stand holding onto a pole. There were no vehicles, no way home, she told local reporters through tears. Several drivers were involved in accidents because sidewalks and potholes were invisible beneath the floodwaters. One TNVS driver reportedly hit a road divider and suffered minor injuries. According to official data, the total rainfall that day reached 141 millimeters in a single day, with 121 millimeters falling in just 1 hour. Experts call this an urban cloudburst, a short-lived, highly intense localized burst of rain that often occurs in large cities with extensive concrete surfaces and limited water absorption. Sea surface temperatures around the Philippines recorded an above-normal 29.5 degrees Celsius, which facilitated the formation of large rain clouds. Wind speeds ranged from 25 to 30 kilometers per hour, enough to push moist air masses inland. Quezon City's drainage system, designed to accommodate a maximum of 50 millimeters of rain per hour, was clearly unable to handle such a large volume of water. As a result, 36 of the city's 142 barangays experienced flooding, including areas not previously considered vulnerable. The drains were clogged with garbage and mud, some of which had not been cleared since the previous rainy season. Uncontrolled development exacerbated the situation, with many buildings encroaching on river and waterway boundaries. The city government immediately deployed teams from the Department of Public Works and Highways, DPWH, and the Quezon City Engineering Office to clear the drains and remove the floodwaters. The Quezon City mayor declared this incident a turning point in flood management. He promised to adopt the Drainage Master Plan as the primary reference for all future development and flood control projects. "We can no longer wait for the next disaster to act," he said at a press conference that evening. On the other hand, climatology and disaster experts issued a stark warning. Dr. Mahar Lagmay of Project NOAA called this incident clear evidence of climate change. He said extreme weather is now the new norm, not the exception. He emphasized the importance of integrating meteorological data and urban planning to build climate resilience. "We can no longer rely on historical data. Cities must adapt to the new reality," he said. Health risks also increased after the floods. Stagnant water carries sewage, waste, and potential diseases such as leptospirosis and skin infections. Hospitals in Quezon City recorded an increase in patients with fever and open wounds. Doctors warned residents not to walk in floodwaters without protection and to immediately wash their feet and hands after exposure. The floods also opened old wounds of social inequality. Poor residents living in low-lying, densely populated areas such as Barangay Tatalan, Roxas, and Bagong Silingan were the hardest hit. Many of them lacked access to second floors or safe evacuation sites. Some families were forced to sleep in overcrowded barangay halls, without electricity or clean water. In broader reflection, this flood was more than just a puddle. It reflected fragile systems, a city that was growing too fast, and a climate that was changing too drastically. In 1 hour, Quezon City learned that preparedness was not an option, but a necessity. The city must build resilient systems, not just physical infrastructure, but also public awareness, disaster education, and policies that prioritize citizen safety. The sudden flood that struck Quezon City in late September 2025 was not an isolated event. Behind the extreme rains that pounded the Philippine capital was a much larger and more deadly tropical storm system, Typhoon Gualoy, or Typhoon Apong as it is locally known. Gualoy was the 20th storm of this year's Pacific typhoon season and one of the most destructive in the past decade. Gualoy formed from a tropical disturbance north of Yap, Micronesia, on September 22nd. In less than 2 days, the system developed into a tropical storm and was named Gualoy by the Japan Meteorological Agency, JMA, while PAGASA named it Apong. On September 24th, the storm attained typhoon status and began moving southwestward, entering the Philippines. Although Quezon City was not in Gualoy's direct path, the storm system affected wind and moisture patterns across Luzon. Easterly winds carrying moisture from the Pacific Ocean were amplified by Gualoy's outer circulation, creating highly unstable atmospheric conditions. This resulted in localized extreme rainfall that triggered extensive flooding in Quezon City, a tail effect of the larger storm. Gualoy made 6 landfalls in the eastern Visayas and Mimaropa regions, bringing strong winds, heavy rains, and high waves. More than 400,000 people were evacuated, and at least 27 people died from drowning, being struck by falling trees or collapsing buildings. Infrastructure damage was widespread, with power outages in many provinces and agricultural losses exceeding 500 million Cuban pesos. Meteorologists call this phenomenon peripheral convection. Convection at the edge of a storm system that can cause heavy rainfall far from the center of the storm. In this case, Quezon City fell victim to Gualoy's secondary effects, even though it wasn't mentioned in the main storm warning. After leaving the Philippines, Gualoy crossed the South China Sea and made landfall in Ha Tin, Vietnam, in the early hours of September 29th. With winds reaching 133 kilometers per hour, the storm caused widespread destruction. 19 people were killed, 88 injured, and more than 100,000 homes were damaged. Hanoi experienced extensive flooding, with water entering homes and paralyzing traffic. Typhoon Gualoy comes just days after Super Typhoon Ragasa struck the northern Philippines, killing 14 people. 2 major storms in 1 week demonstrate the increasing intensity of tropical cyclone activity in Southeast Asia. Scientists warn that global warming is strengthening these storms, making them form more quickly, become more powerful, and become more unpredictable.